really can't make this stuff up sometimes. And look, we may never know why Donald Trump suddenly spent a week hiding entirely from the American public. But you don't actually need baseless online conspiracies to explain why he might not want to show his face in public right now.
Yes, Jen Psaki, $1 million news anchor at MS-13 NBC. Trump disappeared for a week. Is that what I just learned from NBC News? I missed that Trump disappearing for a week thing. Oh, you mean over the Labor Day weekend where he played golf twice at his own golf course in Sterling, Virginia, Trump National? We had a great politics and a pint event there. One time it was a great one, too. Boy, it was a really great one at the Trump National Golf Course in Sterling, Virginia. The entire world was there. It was wonderful. Great stuff. Well, again, a very happy Wednesday to you, and welcome back once again. And that does mean, Michael, thanks for reminding me that it's Mailbag Day. It's Mailbag Day again, isn't it? But I before we get to the mailbag, I want to share something else because we had that ridiculous Jen Psaki on her television show on MSDNC saying that President Trump had disappeared for a week. Now, that didn't happen. But if you get your news from NBC Fake News and MS-13 NBC, then you might be walking around with the wrong impression. It kind of goes to what Ronald Reagan said so long ago. It's not that Democrats don't know anything. It's just that so much of what they know is wrong, right? And that would go with Jen Psaki. I suspect she's a liar rather than a stupid person. I think she lies for a living, and they pay her a handsome seven-figure salary for that task, lying on behalf of the Democrat Party. They're quite remarkable. But it goes to another event of sorts that's going on today. There are people that are described as survivors of Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein, a lifelong Democrat who had lots of Democrat friends, who flew on his Democrat jet to his Democrat island to commit sexual offenses against minor women, that is underage women, and presumably males too, but I don't know a lot about that. But, you know, they're Democrats, so you got to have some of that going on too. But on Capitol Hill today, scads of Jeffrey Epstein survivors, so-called, have been invited up to Capitol Hill, where the Democrats have staged a media event, and the media are gobbling it up. The goal is to get Donald Trump, of course, It's all about getting Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, and get Donald Trump is the game that the media plays every day. Been playing it for 10 years, I think. Now, when did President Trump come down the escalator? That was officially 10 years ago now. That was more than 10 years ago now. But CNN carrying the Jeffrey Epstein survivors event on Capitol Hill nonstop, bumper to bumper. I don't think they're even going to commercial breaks. MS-13 DNC carrying the Jeffrey Epstein event on Capitol Hill, bumper to bumper, nonstop. I think no commercial breaks. The Fox News people carried it for a little while, and then they dumped out of it and got other news. And BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, they carried the Jeffrey Epstein event on Capitol Hill live for a long time. And they've got a podium set up, Epstein Files Transparency Act, the Transparency Act. This is the Democrats think they're going to ensnare Donald Trump in this Jeffrey Epstein thing. And we already have litigated this time and time again over the course of years, starting years ago when it became clear that as wealthy people in New York City, they had encountered each other. They had met each other at rich people events in New York City. Epstein showed up at Mar-a-Lago one time, and Trump ejected him from the place and banned him from the place years ago. And, you know, that would be if Epstein had anything on him. It would have been a good time for Epstein while he was living to, narc out President Trump and say, oh, yeah, Trump came to Epstein Island all the time. He had his own cottage there. But that never happened. None of that ever happened, right? And then MSDNC, they invited a bunch of, because it's an event, political event going on in D.C. right now. And I'm sorry these young women are being used and abused by the Democrats for political reasons. But this has all been litigated when it comes to President Trump. Yesterday, they at NBC News Now, they had invited on a number of the Jeffrey Epstein survivors that are now on Capitol Hill at this press event. And NBC Fake News invited a group, what are there, 10 of them or so, on the NBC News show, hosted by a woman named Hallie Jackson, who pretends to be a reporter, but she's just a Democrat. She does not articulate clearly. She doesn't speak well. She doesn't speak clearly. That's why she is a broadcaster at NBC News, I guess. And she asked, this is last night, yesterday, on NBC Fake News Now, and she asked, well, you guys are Jeffrey Epstein survivors. What about Donald Trump? Was Donald Trump there? Did Donald Trump do anything wrong? And they all kind of shook their heads, and one of them speaking for the crowd said, no, absolutely not. There is nothing we have to say about Donald Trump. So then the Democrat fake anchor who doesn't speak clearly, Hallie Jackson, then says, well, what about Bill Clinton? Is he in the clear? And this is what it sounded like.
I do have to ask, and I know, and it's just something that I think we're compelled to at this moment, with the attention on President Trump, with these questions around a pardon. Did anybody see or hear of the president himself doing anything inappropriate as it related to Jeffrey Epstein?
No.
Or former President Clinton?
No.
No, or real quick. Well, she got the answer she didn't want. No. But Trump, you have to understand, I love the way she qualifies it, saying you understand the question because there's so much attention focused on President Trump at this point. Well, he's the president of the United States. Is that what you mean? But what does that have to do with Jeffrey Epstein, which has been litigated again and again and again and again when it comes to Donald Trump? And said no, anything inappropriate. Is that what she said? Anything inappropriate? And no. And very disappointed. She then quickly shifts. And nothing for Bill Clinton, too, right? Because he has got a different thing going on over there. He does.
Did anybody see or hear of the president himself doing anything inappropriate as it related to Jeffrey Epstein?
No.
Or former President Clinton?
No.
No. Only one of them said no to the Clinton thing. We're going to have to call him back in and start over again. Isn't that amazing? NBC anchor straight up asks Epstein survivors if they saw Trump, quote, himself do anything inappropriate. That was the question from the fake anchor, hence fanker, Hallie Jackson. Isn't that amazing? And in the headlines, I love the headline here from the left-wing media. NBC anchor straight up asked Epstein survivors if they saw Trump himself do anything inappropriate. And in the headline, they don't have, they all said no. They don't have that. That's not in the headline. Isn't that amazing? Our media, the most corrupt institution in America. Just great. Isn't that wonderful? You're a Democrat Party. Oh, having our last caller, Dave, asked about Miami. And I got to say, Miami appears to not be in the top 20 of murder cities. Chicago very much in the top 20 when it comes to murder cities. But their raw numbers of murders, Chicago is number one in the running for that. 573 murders in 2024, 573, with a homicide rate of 21.5 homicides per 100,000 people, whereas New York City, 4.6. However, the highest when you go, that's raw numbers. When you go to per capita homicides, St. Louis ranks number one because while Washington, D.C. has 21.5 murders per 100,000, St. Louis has 52.9 murders per 100,000. They had only 149 murders compared to Chicago's 573. But because of a much smaller population of the city, they rank number one per capita with 52.9 homicides per 100,000. That is more than most third world countries. And that's another Democrat city. The Democrats love to say, oh, there's a Republican town, Montgomery, Alabama has a higher homicide rate. They like to say Stockton, California has a higher homicide rate, something like that. But they lies, damn lies, and statistics, the Democrat Party. They are truly something. Yes, they are. All right, now, it is Mailbag Day. And Michael keeps reminding me it's Mailbag Day. I say that because I'm mocking him because he doesn't keep reminding me. But let me go to the mailbag for mailbag questions, and let's see what we can get to here. It is, and we didn't get to it last week because the school shooting happened in Minneapolis during our Wednesday broadcast. Now, let me go to today's mailbag question. We've taken last week's also. Some of them were kind of dated, but let me see what I can get to here. Bosch asks, when will Governor Pritzker of Illinois ask President Trump to send National Guard and other federal law enforcement agents to make Chicago safe again? Will he welcome them as warmly as Mayor Muriel Bowser did in D.C.? Bush, I've got to say the answer to that is no. Pritzker will not welcome any help to fight crime and reduce the number of murders, in particular in Chicago. He will not. He will not do that because he's pro-murder and he's a billionaire and he's always been perfectly safe and comfortable his whole life. And he travels with a heavily armed detail of state law enforcement officers that provide security to him. He has a lack of awareness, I think, that stands out even among elected Democrat politicians. So I don't think that he will do anything to do that. And interestingly, Bosch actually sent a question in last Wednesday that we didn't get to because of the school shooting and everything, when he asked, whose crime statistics are more believable, Bowser's, the mayor of Washington, D.C., or Trump's? Well, we already learned, Bosch, that Washington, D.C. police had been tamping down the crime stats and lying about what time of crime it was. So the mayor of Washington, D.C. has been using stats that have been tampered with and reduced and lowered. Should Trump sign an executive order denying federal funds to any state or local government that knowingly falsifies their crime statistics? See, I like that thought. That's a very interesting thought about threatening to deny federal funds. If you're lying about the crime in your city or in your state, very interesting question and suggestion by Bush, honestly. From last week's mailbag as well, Marshall asked, what two things are the Democrats most upset about today? What are they most upset about today? And it still works today, that question, as it worked last week. And the answer is they're upset about fighting crime. They're very much against fighting crime. They don't like fighting crime. And today they're very angry. We haven't even been checking with MSNBC, but they're all about Jeffrey Epstein today because they're still hopeful that they'll be able to get Trump on something. They're very angry that Trump hit a boat coming out of Venezuela loaded with drugs and Tren de Aragua gang members. Those are the two things they're very upset about today. That's a fact. And back to today, because we have mailbag from last week and this week, where Herb asked today, where do you go for an Italian beef sandwich when you're back in Chicago? Where do you go for an Italian beef sandwich when you're back in Chicago? That is a great question, and I haven't been out to having an Italian beef in Chicago in such a long time. It's terrible, and they are the best sandwiches. They're so much better than Philly cheesesteak is a great sandwich. But I've got to say, the Italian beef in Chicago is better with peppers and onions, and the gravy that you get is just so great. And there are a lot of great Italian beef places, I got to say. You know, Al's, I've got to say, on Wells Street is right at the top of my list. And when I'm there working at WLS, that is a convenient place to go. But the Italian beef, undervalued sandwich, underappreciated sandwich. The Philadelphia, they get that whole thing. But ours in Chicago, much better. I've got to say, much better indeed. No doubt about it. Now, I've got to, because we have commercials and stuff. This ain't NPR. This is commercial radio. I'm going to come back for more from the mailbag. You know that the all-new third-generation Eden Pure Thunderstorm air purifier is finally available to all Americans everywhere. And it builds on the incredible success of the previous two generations, which had already earned thousands of five-star reviews on Al Gore's amazing internet. The new thunderstorm uses two technologies that studies have proved help to kill up to 99.9% of bacteria and viruses floating in the air that you breathe. Also removes dust and pet dander and smoke and all kinds of nasty from the air that you breathe. And it gets rid of any odor. Any odor, I'm telling you. You don't have to buy filters over and over again either. They're very convenient, very handy. The thunderstorm will get rid of any stinky smell. Odors from trash cans and cigarette smoke and liberal protesters, musty basements, no match for the Eden Pure thunderstorm. And right now, because we hang out together, you can save $200 on an Eden Pure Thunderstorm 3-pack for whole home protection. Put one in your basement, your teenager's room. Bring one to the office. Give one as a gift. Anywhere you like to have clean, fresh air to breathe. All you have to do is go to EdenPureDeals.com and use the discount code Chris3, Chris and the number 3, to save $200 on 3 thunderstorms. That's EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is Chris3. Yes, sir. All right, yes, I have more mailbag questions coming up. And wacky Democrats, too. All right, we are in the middle of our mailbag questions for the day. And I've got a good one here. I like it. Jay Radford, he's got a great question. Why no self-immolations lately? Why no self-immolations lately? That's a very important question facing the nation, I think. And isn't that great? We have more from the mailbag for today, and we have more of those rascally Democrats who are fighting for more murder in America because they know who's behind all this. And the problem is not our guns, it's their sons. We got the mayor of Chicago. He's pro-crime. Let's go, Brandon Johnson. He's pro-crime. He's pro-murder. I don't know why I just thought of Juicy Smollett, but Juicy Smollett, remember that he faked a crime in Chicago. Who fakes a crime in Chicago? For the love of Mike, for crying out loud. What is up with that? That's completely nuts. And the Fox News people, I think it's the local station in Chicago, they went out and they talked to people on the street. They call them man-on-the-street interviews, even when you talk to women. Man-on-the-street interviews. And they have responses from people in Chicago. Hey, what do you think about President Trump fighting crime in Chicago, Illinois? And I don't know, let's go ask the man on the street in Chicago and see what the man on the street thinks, even if it's a woman on the street. So I got some of that for you, too, coming up. It's a crazy world. It's normal where we are, but then there are Democrats nearby. Yes, I'm getting text messages about the murder rates and the statistics and stuff, which can be fluid, you know. St. Louis, according to WirePoint, St. Louis ranked number 1 with a homicide rate of 52.9 per 100,000. Memphis comes in number 2 in this ranking with 38 murders per 100,000 people. That's a lot. That's an awful lot. Raw numbers, Chicago has 573 murders for a homicide rate of 21.5 per 100,000, but the rate is different than it's numbers, statistics. It's complicated, isn't it? Yeah, Memphis is right up there. Baltimore, number 3, with 35.6 homicides per 100,000. And the Democrats say, this is great. Come on, it was much worse 10 years ago. And they said, numbers, it's trending in the right direction. You guys should stop shooting people. How about that? I don't want to put any pressure on you or anything, but there is. Now, let me get back to the mailbag because it's Wednesday. It's mailbag day. It's hump day in the Clinton household. Let me get back to the today questions. The today questions, which are great and wonderful. September 3rd of 2025. But Jay Radford asks, and I think a very intelligent question, Why no self-immolation lately? Huh. That's a good question. It is. Someone needs to be marching with signs like they just love to do. Democrats for self-immolation. See, that'd be a good sign for Democrats. Democrats for self-immolation, because they've had at least 8 Democrats self-immolate in the last several years. I think it started with the Democrat that self-immolated at the Supreme Court on Earth Day, set himself on fire and killed himself because he was angry with people who were putting smoke into the air. Didn't want people putting smoke into the sky, so naturally he set himself on fire at the Supreme Court and killed himself in the plaza in front of the Supreme Court. And then Democrats have self-immolated and killed themselves at the Israeli embassy in Washington, at the self-immolated at the Israeli consulate in Atlanta, the Israeli consulate in Boston, because they hate the Jews so much that they're self-immolating. Democrats are. Democrats self-immolated at the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada, inside of an Elon Musk car. What's that Elon Musk car called? Yeah, the Cybertruck. It was the Cybertruck. Blew himself up, set himself on fire, and that killed only himself, but wanted to kill a lot of other people. Not a lot of self-immolation. Jay Radford, Michael Piercy and I were talking about this morning because it's Mailbag Day, and I came to the conclusion that it might be climate change. Could be climate change, because it's summertime, and we have this feels like. Is that what it's called, the feels like? Feels like temperature? The feels like, because it's 96 degrees, but it feels like 106. So you're not going to self-immolate when it's, it feels like 106. And to me, it only feels like 96 when they tell me that it feels like 106. But it's been hot out, so that might have something to do with it. And it also reminded us of Katie Porter, why Katie Porter and her daughter have not self-immolated yet.
I told my 9-year-old daughter that I was going to be speaking with you, and I said, what do you think about climate change? And she said, the earth is on fire, and we're all going to die soon. And I asked her how that made her feel, and she said it made her feel angry.
And made her feel hot, too. Made her feel real hot. And maybe she feels like she's self-immolating, but it's hard to say. Katie Porter, she left the House of Representatives. She ran for the Senate. She lost. She wants to be governor of California now. Self-immolation. It could be climate change. That's that. Now, Danny, thank you, Jay Radford. That's a good, I know self-immolation slightly. And it's summertime. And Michael and I agreed that the fall is coming soon. It's already cooling off in Washington. The feels like temperature is just very comfortable, very nice, like 74 degrees or something like that. It's real nice. And maybe when it gets cold, self-immolations will make a comeback. Because, you're right. There haven't been many lately. There was a guy self-immolated at the Donald Trump trial in New York in front of the courthouse, self-immolated and killed himself in front of all the TV cameras there. Yeah. Come on, guys. Slackers. That could be the explanation, too. They're just slackers. Slackers. All right, next question from the Danny asks, are there any smart Democrats in the party? Sure doesn't look like it in the news. Well, Danny, I've got to say it. Michael and I talked about this today, too. And we were struggling. And maybe Katie Porter, she's real smart because the earth is on fire. And then she asked her daughter, how does that make you feel? And we're all going to die soon. And then she asked her 9-year-old daughter, how does that make you feel? And the daughter says, hot. She'd said angry. It made her angry because she's got to firebomb a Jewish governor's mansion or something like that. Isn't that amazing? But Danny asks, are there any smart Democrats in the party? Sure doesn't look like it on the news. And we were trying to think of a smart Democrat. And, well, Jerry Nadler is stepping down from the House. So that's a smart thing to do. Wadler, the Wadler boy from New York. He used to have a great rooftop party at the Carpenters and Joiners building in New York in Washington, on Capitol Hill once a year. And they brought in their hot dogs from New York because he's a congressman from New York. And they brought in a barrel of water from New York because you had to cook your hot dogs in New York water. Otherwise, it wasn't authentic. And me and my friend Pat would go there every year for the Jerry Nadler hot dog party on the roof of the Carpenters and Joiners building. They had free beer, too. So free hot dogs and free beer. That was smart. But he's stepping down, and that's good. And then we agreed that Nancy Pelosi is a genius, at least when it comes to Wall Street, because she and her husband, they started with not so much, and now hundreds of millions of dollars. And Wall Street trading, insider trading, we used to call that insider trading. And that's all fine with Democrats, and that means the news media, too, the news media as well. Yes, sir. Crazy man, crazy. So any smart Democrats, and really the only one I could think of, Danny, smart Democrat, Hillary Clinton is evil. So she's like, if a man angers her like Vince Foster, she can convince him to shoot himself in the head and roll himself up in a Persian rug after he shoots himself in the head at Fort Marcy Park near the CIA in Virginia. She's smart evil. They have all kinds of insider trading things, too. So we got that going on. But there was one smart Democrat, and I was struggling. Daniel Patrick Moynihan was a Democrat senator from the state of New York. Hillary Clinton stole his Senate seat when he decided to step down in 2001. I think he died in 2003, Daniel Patrick Moynihan. But very bright, intelligent, thoughtful Democrat, a writer, a thinker, and he, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, also worked for the Nixon administration, even though Richard Nixon was a Republican. I say that for Democrats listening along. And he worked in the Gerald Ford administration. Gerald Ford was a Republican as well. Daniel Patrick Moynihan, ambassador to the United Nations under a Republican president, ambassador to India under a Republican president, and U.S. Senate as a Democrat for many, many years out of the state of New York. He was very smart. He wrote about crime and interesting things, lots of interesting things. Yeah, but Nancy Pelosi is brilliant, Wall Street trader. She's a genius when it comes to that. So she's smart that way, but that's about it, I've got to say. Yes, I do. And Dirk, this now going back to last week's, which we didn't get to last week because of the school shooting by a transgender Democrat. Dirk asked, what are some of your favorite words? Now, that is a great question, a wonderful question. What are some of your favorite words? And unfortunately, I did not take the time to sit down and write down some of my favorite words, but I have a great many favorite words. I love words. I love the English language, and the English language is full of wonderful words that are great to use that simply occur to me in context while I'm flowing and riffing with whatever the topic of the hour or the topic of the day may be. There aren't specific words that I would say, oh, this is one of my favorite words necessarily. It's just my favorite word is the next word that occurs to me mid-riff when I'm just riffing on something and as mellifluous as I am, I enjoy just happening upon my next favorite word. I don't really have any. And this is, I didn't even think of this till just now. I think I try to avoid latching on to certain words, particular words, and using them over and over again, because I find that a lot of people do that. That person uses that word much too frequently, and I notice that, so I try to avoid using the same word over and over again. And I wouldn't want anybody to say, that's one of Plant's favorite words. He uses it again and again.
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
So you gotta look out for that sort of thing too. So my favorite word is my next word. That fits perfectly in the circumstance that we're talking about. Yes, sir. And Ray, and this is going to have to be our final question from the mailbag. Ray asked, this is from last week now, what are your thoughts on Trump using 600,000 Chinese students as trade bargaining chips, please? And I've got to say, I can answer that pretty quickly. I don't like this. This is something I don't like. And I know he's negotiating and pulling back and forth with communist China and Xi Jinping. But The Chinese send 600,000 people here as students, and they're all here with the permission of the Chinese Communist Party, and they will all have a mission that is blessed by the Chinese Communist Party to come here to steal something or corrupt something. And I'm against it, and I'd like to sit down with President Trump and talk to him about this, because I'm completely against this idea that President Trump takes, I think, much too casually. And I've got to say that the Chinese are evil, sinister, murderous Chinese communists who will steal everything. I was watching their military parade today. Their tanks look just like our M1 tanks. Planes flying over look just like our F-16s. Everything, and they steal everything from us because they're not creative and imaginative, and they don't invent things the way that we do, the Chinese. And these 600,000 students use them as bargaining chips. I don't agree with President Trump on that, Ray. I'm against the president thinking that's a good idea and that somehow it will benefit us. I believe that it is something that the Chinese will use in evil ways to benefit themselves and no one else. Currently, the number of Chinese student visas, approximately 300,000. I can't imagine U.S. intelligence infrastructure is equipped to handle doubling a potential of that potential foreign threat, those spies. And I agree with you completely, Ray. It's something on which I disagree with President Trump. Bad idea to let all these Chinese students in. They're all here as spies. They're the bad guys, not the good guys. And that is our mailbag for the day. Yes, it is. And let us go back to the telephones and talk to the great American people. Now, I know we had audio we wanted to get to also, but let's go to I haven't gone to a call in quite some time. So let's go to Chuck calling from the volunteer state of Tennessee. Chuck, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Well, how you doing, Chris? And thank you for taking my call.
You bet.
I was just wondering, we need to start asking the question to these Democrat mayors and Democrat governors, but how many murders is too many murders in a city? How many assaults is too many assaults? And if they answer any number other than one, then we need to kick them out.
Yeah.
Because that should be the number.
Yeah.
And then manipulating it, and most people don't understand percentages, but that's just another way of making things look different. I noticed President Trump the other day was using actual numbers. There were 22 murders this day, 9 murders this day. There are, 52 murders in 1 month. That hits people to the core, okay? Just politicians using different ways of presenting data. It's just controlling people and trying to give them information because they're dumbed down a little. And, boy, they're dumbed down a lot more today than they were 50 years ago.
Yep. No, you're 100% right about that. And the manipulation of statistics has become a virtual art form in American politics. In Chicago, again, 293 murders so far in Chicago this year. Just this week, 5 people shot and killed, 38 shot and wounded, for a total of 43 people shot in Chicago this week. All right, and you're right about the statistics, and I think Harry Truman is credited with lies, damn lies, and statistics as a line. And it's true, manipulating the statistics are those per capita homicides, because, Philadelphia versus Stockton, California you just use that and start manipulating the statistics there, which the Democrats are and the media are very fond, and dishonest people and liars are very fond of manipulating statistics to misrepresent the realities of what we're dealing with. Right, Chuck?
I worked out of Stockton back in the 90s, and I'm one of the escaped from California to the volunteer state because everyone I knew, and I lived in that state for 40 years, everyone I knew had nothing to do with voting for Newsom or any of the Democrat people.
Yeah.
We were all being held hostage. No matter how we voted, it always went their way.
Yeah. Yeah, there are counties in North and East California that want to break away from the state and join neighboring states because there are Republican strongholds in California, as you know, but but the numbers are just. And you're right. You probably got the jump on fleeing California, but people are doing it by the millions now, and appropriately so, because they do everything wrong. Chuck, thank you. Thank you for the call. Thank you for the wisdom. That's absolutely correct, everything that you said. I want to talk to you about living a better digital life in the digital world in which we live with one of our newest partners, WebRoot. We love our partners. I chose WebRoot because the total protection product that they make available. WebRoot's all-in-one package offers plan options for individuals, allowing for coverage of up to 5 devices. Up to 10 devices with the family package, and they've got you covered no matter what. WebRoot's coverage includes antivirus protection, identity theft protection, VPN backup, and a whole lot more. You don't need to be an adult or a kid or a college student, because WebRoot wants to make sure your entire family is protected, whether you're a toddler on an iPad, a student, a senior on the laptop, on the iPhone. You know how this works. WebRoot allows for my best girl and I to live a better digital life, and that's why I want to recommend that you do the same. Right now, you can get 50% off, half off of WebRoot's Total Protection or WebRoot's Essentials plan when you go to webroots.com/plant. Again, 50% off, half off WebRoot's Total Protection or WebRoot's Essentials plan when you go to webroot.com/plant. You will thank me later. Yeah, I got to tell you, that's why 3 hours a day is not enough, because the information flow, the internet, the overwhelming amount of information that we're confronted with every day, and then the dishonesty of one of our major political parties, and of course the news media.
Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list. We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know.
Confidentially? Why would you do it confidentially? You don't want to do it confidentially. The world wants to see the list, but that's the event on Capitol Hill today. One of the women said that she traveled to Africa with Bill Clinton on a trip. An Epstein victim traveled to Africa on an airplane, presumably with Bill Clinton. And this other lady says, oh, yeah, we're the survivors. We're going to put together a list confidentially. Well, you planning on selling it in a book? What do you mean confidentially?